The title of this is Play Ball, and it's a history of spring training baseball in Fort Myers, Florida. I'm going to go way back to 1888 to tell you about the first time that spring training came here in Florida. It was the Washington Capitals, and they were training in Jacksonville. Connie Mack, who will be the manager owner of the Philadelphia Athletics, was their catcher. He was interviewed and he told about what their experience was like. It was very difficult for them to find a boarding house that would take them because 4 of the 14 players were sober. That means 10 of them enjoyed drinking. It was a very restrictive experience at the boarding house because of their behavior. It was a different time then. And guess what? They don't return to Florida, or another team doesn't return to Florida for 15 years. In 1903, Connie Mack is no longer a player, a catcher. He is the manager of the Philadelphia Athletics. And after World War I, spring training would become an annual event. St. Petersburg is the first place to get teams to come. They're promoting their waterfront stadium, and it's a man named Al Lang, who was actually headed for Fort Myers and then never made it that far. So he stopped in St. Pete and he established baseball there. Now by 1925, there were 9 teams training in Florida. And after World War II, clubs settled in permanent homes. Before that, they would go from place to place. And from what I'm reading, it doesn't appear like this was organized by Major League Baseball, but by the individual teams. How does it get started here in Fort Myers? We can thank this woman right here, Judy McGregor Terry, who also happened to be Thomas Edison's neighbor at one point. She and her second husband, after her first husband died, she married Dr. Marshall Terry, and they planned to turn a cow pasture into a country club. It was not greeted with great success because it was on Palm Beach Boulevard. It was very far away. According to most people, it was sandy. It wasn't easy to develop. They couldn't sell a lot of memberships. And when she passes away, her husband will give the clubhouse to the city of Fort Myers, the county, and then they will accept the clubhouse as county property, hoping it will be used for a county fair. And then eventually Dr. Terry will donate the grounds as well. And it will no longer be a country club. Instead, there'll be a country club at the Fort Myers Country Club that you're familiar with on McGregor Boulevard. And this is named Terry Park, also known as Lee County Fairgrounds. In 1923 to 1925, the Kiwanis Club was led by a pharmacist from Fort Myers named Richard Richards. And he was the president of the Kiwanis, and he persuades the athletics to come to Fort Myers in 1925 for $6,000. And I just read the other day that Connie Mack said it was going to cost them $20,000 to be here. They left behind Montgomery, Alabama, and actually they had wandered from place to place before that. The baseball field in the 1,500-seat grandstand was built in Terry Park, and it was built to Connie Mack's specifications. Because the athletics were coming here, 5 sports writers were on the train, and this was great advertising for Fort Myers. In 1926 and 1927, Thomas Edison goes out to visit Terry Park. The first time he goes, which I believe this is from, one of the coaches, Kid Gleason, pitched to him with Connie Mack, who had been a former catcher, catching the ball. The first time he struck out. The second time he got a hit, and he was delighted. In 1927, when he visits Terry Park, what happens? Well, the great baseball player, Ty Cobb, was there. Ty Cobb had been with the Detroit Tigers for, I think, 19 years or so, maybe even longer. But he spends the last 2 years of his career with the Athletics. And he is very nervous about meeting Thomas Edison and very excited. And he offers to pitch to him, which he does. He gets halfway off the mound. Mac is catching again. Thomas Edison gets a hit on his first swing, hits Ty Cobb in the shoulder, knocks him to the ground. And Edison says, "Do you think you could hit like that when you're 80? He was very proud of himself. So we figure he's probably got about a 666 batting average. In 1931 is the last time Thomas Edison's going to attend this spring training game. And he does. He goes in the third inning, which is a little disappointing because you always should start at the beginning of a game. But he arrives and the crowd stops and gives him a standing ovation because he was there. That's how famous Edison was. And if to back up for a minute, the Athletics also go visit Thomas Edison at his home, Seminole Lodge, in 1927. So to let you know, when the Athletics were here, Edison developed a friendship with Connie Mack. He was very fond of the team. And back then, people that were fans were called cranks, and Mr. Edison called himself a crank. But the Athletics were also embraced by the town, and they had to live in several hotels. There wasn't one central location. There's so much information about the Athletics here that I could talk about it for hours and hours, but I think that wouldn't be very exciting for you. So they were here from 1925 to 1936. They won 3 pennants while they were here. They had won in the early 1900s and 1910s, and then the whole team was decimated due to financial reasons, and they built the team back up again. They win 3 pennants and 2 World Series, 1929 and 1930. This was such a fantastic team that 5 of the games, players took the field at one time in Philadelphia on June 11th. 2 more entered the game later. 7 future Hall of Famers played in the game for the Athletics. I don't think you'd ever see a lineup like that again. Players who played in Fort Myers that are in the Hall of Fame today: Ty Cobb, you all know him; Mickey Cochran, who played most of his career with the Athletics; Jimmy Fox; Waite Hoyt. Waite Hoyt's extra special to me. He actually played with the Red Sox for 2 years, the Yankees for a long time, but Jim Nickum, who had been a historian here for over 30 years, that was his father-in-law. And I don't believe that he ever knew that Waite Hoyt was here for 1 year and played for Connie Mack, and most likely got to meet Thomas Edison. And there were numerous others well-known athletes of the time, but the most famous and the one that I would most desire to meet would be my Connie Mack, their manager. The Athletics leave in 1936, and they actually go to Mexico City. So you can see it wasn't organized baseball against other teams. They did play teams there. And for a number of years, they wandered from place to place, and they did end up on the East Coast of Florida. And as you probably know today, the Athletics then became the Kansas City Athletics in the mid-1950s. And eventually they become the Oakland Athletics. And their manager, Connie Mack, had as a record of being the person that managed the longest, won the most games, and just an amazing career. What happens next? They don't have a team for 4 years until 1940, the Cleveland Indians come. And they're here 1940 and 1941. This story tickled me because this is organized by a rival team for the Indians to come here. The New York Giants were leaving Baton Rouge to train in Winter Haven, and they wanted their New Orleans rivals to be closer. And so the manager of the Giants actually calls up Fort Myers to see what they can arrange. Well, Cleveland wanted $5,000 to come to Fort Myers. Doesn't that seem like a ridiculously small amount today when we talk about millions? and 50% of the local gate for 9 games and 2 games in Miami. And that was agreed to. And by the way, this picture is the great pitcher Bob Feller. He had a great leg move there, and he is in the Hall of Fame today. They were here 2 years, and I read some newspaper clippings that said they were trying to raise another $5,000 to entice them to remain here for another year through various civic organizations like the Kiwanis or Chamber of Commerce. But I attempted to find another clipping to do with this, and I just couldn't. So my educated guess is it's out there. I haven't found it yet, but they weren't able to raise the money. But for whatever reason, in 1942, they moved to Clearwater. But that's going to be short-lived because things changed after 1942. So they were the only team that was here for 2 years. And by the way, they do improve. They go from about 7th place, this was before they had the East-West Central divisions, to 2nd place. So we'd like to think if they were here longer, they probably would have won a World Series while they were here. And while I'm talking about this, I only focus on their experience while they were here in Fort Myers. They certainly did win World Series at other places. What happens next? Well, World War II comes. And that really doesn't have anything to do with Fort Myers, except that means that we can't have teams here. From 1943 to 1945, train lines were moving troops around the country. So they wanted people to conserve their resources. So the teams were told by the head of their MLB that they could not go south. Teams had to find training sites north of the Ohio and Potomac and rivers and east of the Mississippi River. The St. Louis Cardinals and the Browns were the exceptions, and they were allowed to remain west of the Mississippi and to train near home in Missouri. So, for example, the Red Sox would be training at one time on a college campus. There was a big area in Indiana where people went to train, but I want you to picture having to train in this extremely cold weather, because the whole point of spring training today is to be someplace warm and get ready. So you're either going to be in Florida or you're going to be in Arizona, but not then. They needed to make a sacrifice. Whoops, I went too far. Let me go back here. The next team we get, so there's a long time from 1941 to 1955, there's no team here. But then things change. The Pittsburgh Pirates come to Fort Myers from 1955 to 1968. The original wooden stands that were built for the athletics were destroyed by fire, so they rebuilt the ballpark and the stands. Everything was done for $80,000. That wouldn't happen today. So if you look at this picture, if you see that structure on top, that is the press box, and the press had to climb up a ladder to get to it. The Pirates win a World Series while they're here. In 1960, Bill Mazeroski, who was known more for his fielding than his hitting, hit a walk-off home run, which they didn't call it that then, but that's what it was. And they won the 1960 World Series against the New York Yankees. The Hall of Famers from that time, Roberto Clemente, Bill Mazeroski, and Willie Stargell. And there were a number of other well-known players that came here because they were here for about 55 to 68. They were here for about 12 years. And today you can go see the Pirates up in Bradenton. They've been there ever since they left here. This is a player that's extra special to me, and I know it's my husband's favorite because he's from Pittsburgh. This is the great Roberto Clemente. He's at Terry Park in 1960. He spent 14, so they were actually here for 14 spring trainings there. This is the hard part to share because at that time there were strong Jim Crow laws in Fort Myers, and Clemente was not allowed to stay with the rest of the team at the Bradford Hotel. He stayed with Etta and Charlie Powell in Dunbar in a private home. He was a hero in Puerto Rico, but here he faced Jim Crow laws and segregation in Fort Myers. The ballparks were segregated then. He couldn't eat with the team when they went on a bus. He couldn't play in the golf tournaments. And he had not experienced racism until he came to the mainland US because he was from Puerto Rico. The great humanitarian Roberto Clemente died on a humanitarian mission, bringing relief supplies to people in Nicaragua. And he was killed. The plane was not suitable. It was loaded with supplies, and he died on New Year's Eve, 1972. Today, Major League Baseball has, every year they award a Roberto Clemente Award. Every team chooses somebody that exhibits community spirit and that generous spirit that Clemente did, and then they pick one overall person. Kansas City Royals. So we don't get another team, we get one the next year. What's interesting here, I've done a lot of reading, and it's interesting that there was just a very down home field to when the Royals were here. They felt like they got to know each other well. People would talk to them and interact with them. It wasn't a baseball experience then. It was just a kind of a more of a cozy down home field. They are here from 1969 to 1987. This was really interesting to me. The infield at Terry Park had AstroTurf. I imagine that that was very difficult to play on. Neither Fort Myers or Lee County were willing to build them a new baseball complex because by 1987, you have to realize that Terry Park, even though it had been rebuilt for the Pirates, that was built in 1925. It was getting worn down. There was an interview with their president. He said they wanted to stay here desperately. And he said, you're going to build the sad part is you're going to build a park for someone else. And it was absolutely correct. They were here for 19 seasons, but then they leave for boardwalks and baseball, the spring training facility of Baseball City near Haines City, an amusement park, and baseball. The amusement park had been a failure before, and unfortunately it was a failure again because places like Disney were nearby. But the Royals will remain there until they move in 2002 to Surprise, Arizona, and that's where they are today. And I guess we would have a lot of questions about why they did not build them a park. They are the World Series champions. They reached the World Series in 1980 as American League champions, but they lost to the Phillies. But in 1985, they went against the Cardinals. Notable players on the Royals who trained in Fort Myers: George Brett, he's their only Hall of Famer; Bo Jackson, Dan Quisenberry, the pitcher, who tragically died of a brain tumor; Frank White, and then Brett Saberhagen, the pitcher. And this picture is actually belongs to the president and CEO of Edison Ford Winter Estates. It's autographed for him. He was gracious enough to let me have a copy of it. His brother-in-law was a trainer, and that's his brother-in-law down in the lower left, kneeling there for the Royals. In 1991, guess what? That long promised stadium was built, and it was not built for the Kansas City Royals. It was built for the Minnesota Twins. At the time, it gets named Hammond Stadium after the assistant county manager who got them to come here. And at the time, it was called Lee County Sports Complex. Later, it was named CenturyLink Sports Complex. This was built for the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins trained in Orlando, except during the war from 1936 to 1990. At that time, they were known as the Washington Senators. From 1901 to 1960. And by the way, then there was a Washington Senators too, who go on to become the Texas Rangers. So I have attended the games at this ballpark many times. There were a lot of metal bleacher seats. But when the Red Sox get a new stadium, Lee County decides that they need to do some improvements to their complex, and I agree. They spent, I think, about $45 million. And they made better seating. I wish they'd made a little more shade. They had improved their practice fields, and they created a dormitory complex for players that were coming from other countries so they could stay there. It was a great improvement, and I think they had a 30-year contract, and those improvements were made within 2014 and 2015, and there were numerous ones made to the ballpark as well. 1991, their first year here, they win the World Series over the Braves in 7 games. And it was an amazing series. They win Game 7 in the Metrodome in Minneapolis. Notable players were Jack Morris, the pitcher. He's only with them for 1 year, but he is in the Hall of Fame. John Smoltz, I think, was a year or two. He's in the Hall of Fame. Kirby Puckett, who spent his entire career and passed away in 2006, is in the Hall of Fame. Dave Winfield, Jim Thome, and Paul Molitor, who is also their manager for a few years. He's brought back to work with them. And today, I'm not sure about this year, you can go to a Twins game. It's a beautiful stadium. They play the Red Sox multiple times a year because we are fortunate enough to have 2 teams here today. Boston Red Sox come here in 1993. City of Palms Park, which I absolutely loved. One problem, the playing fields are 3 miles down the road. Some of the notable players that play there, Nomar Garciaparra, Daisuke Matsuzaka. There was Daisuke fever when he arrived here from Japan. And there were many, many people, many reporters that came here from Japan to see him. Johnny Pesky. Now, he wasn't an active player, but he had been a great player with the Red Sox. He is in the Red Sox Hall of Fame, and he was beloved. So he would frequently sit in the dugout as an extra coach or pitch fungo balls to the players. Quite beloved, and very many people grieved when he passed away. Manny Ramirez, who always did some kind of eccentric things in Boston, but a great hitter. And my favorite, I always like to say that I knew him with, David Ortiz, who had started out with the Twins. So he played in spring training here with them. And then when he was let go by the Twins, signed in 2003 by the Red Sox. And I kept on telling my husband he's going to be a big star. And he was. I think he will be a Hall of Fame player. Who's in the Hall of Fame that was at City of Palms Park? Pitched the great pitcher Pedro Martinez. Other people, Ricky Henderson, he was only with them for 1 year. Dennis Eckersley had been with the Red Sox, and he comes back for a year. And so he actually plays in City of Palms. John Smoltz, familiar name, he played there. And Andre Dawson, but they're all in the Hall of Fame under other names. Today, this is taken from a game that I was at. This is JetBlue Stadium, the spring training home of the Boston Red Sox. I'll be honest, one of the things that enticed me about Fort Myers was being here and getting to go to spring training games, and that the Red Sox were here. Well, guess what? 2008, Sarasota comes calling, and they're trying to get the Red Sox to move there. In a somewhat controversial move, trying to use what is known as the tourist tax, it was used to build the Red Sox a new stadium. The problem with City of Palms, and I love that stadium. It was cozy, it's beautiful. The practice fields were away. There wasn't adequate parking, and they decided they needed a new facility. I wish they could I'm sorry. I'm going to go back here, sorry. They wish they could move this facility to JetBlue, at which they end up doing. But JetBlue becomes their new spring training home. It's a complex. There's lots of practice field. Mookie Betts, my favorite player, played there. Unfortunately, he's with the Dodgers. David Ortiz, Dustin Pedroia. You can see Louis Tiant there. If you get to go to practices, you can see Dwight Evans. You can see numbers of famous players there. I'm not sure what will happen this year, how they'll conduct their practices, but in previous years, you're able to go and watch them practice, get up close and personal with the players. This is the first year I'm uncertain as to what will go on. World Series champions, they become champions after 86 years, 2004, 2007, they're at City of Palms, 2013, 2018, they are at JetBlue. And I believe this is the 2013 World Series that they won. Obviously, being in Fort Myers brought them a lot of luck. I will say that this year, we're not sure if any season, other than season ticket holders, if they're going to sell spring training seats or not. I am told that some people have gotten, they have had their spring training memberships renewed, but they're told that it will be at reduced capacity, so they won't all be able to attend all the games. I don't know how that bodes for the rest of us, but hopefully there'll be some games socially distanced that will be able to attend. I put this on here because I wanted to show you some of the places where you can view spring training in Fort Myers area and beyond. It used to be that a lot of the players wouldn't come to Fort Myers because it's so remote, but you can see by the map that the Rays are in Charlotte County. There's people in Clearwater, Sarasota, within a couple of hours. So it hasn't become so far away. And there are 15 teams today in Florida and 15 teams in Arizona. What are you going to do if there's no baseball to watch this year? Here is something you can do. You can go watch the Vagabonds train. They are a team that plays by the 1860 rules, and they practice out at Franklin Lots. And I listed a day that they're going to be there. On the 24th at 1 o'clock, they're practicing. We have 2 people on the team. From Edison Ford Winter Estates, our CEO, Tom Hodevy, who, by the way, his son, Tommy, is the pitching coach for the Chicago Cubs. They happen to do their spring training in Arizona. They were interested in Naples, but Naples wasn't interested in them, so that's where they are. And Matt Andre is our registrar. So you might want to check that out if you're feeling desperate for baseball, which I've been missing. And the reason I spell it baseball as 2 words is that's because how they spelt it back then. There's going to be a vintage baseball game. It's a 1,000-seat park at Terry Park on March 21st. There'll be plenty of room to socially distance. They're trying to get more teams. And if you're interested, our CFO, Tom, says to call Edison Ford, let us know, talk to him, because he's looking for more teams so they can have a little tournament. And by the way, last year at Terry Park, we also had a South Korean team practicing there and doing their spring training there. So there's all kinds of possibilities. Today, there's still a lot of games held at Terry Park that you could check out. College games, Roy Hobbs. Check their schedule because of what's going on with COVID. I'm not sure how much seating there is and what's open to the public. But if you miss baseball like I do, that might be something that you would like to see. I just threw this in because this is my favorite place. I am a Red Sox fan, but I love all baseball. I'd like to visit every park. And this is Fenway Park. And my thrilling baseball experience, I had terrible seats, but it didn't matter because I got to a postseason game, the American League Division Championship Series. I flew up to Boston to go to a game with my son, and there we are at Fenway Park. Can you tell I'm thrilled? It's 4 generations of baseball in my family that have loved the Red Sox. Hopefully there'll be a 5th. I'm sure you all have wonderful experiences from your team as well, but that was the highlight for me to see a postseason game with my son. Fort Myers has 9 World Series championships from 6 teams. That ties with Tampa. Pretty impressive. It's 96 years since spring training began in Fort Myers, and I added up the years that teams have played here. There have been 77 years of spring training in Fort Myers, Florida. And I put up that sign from game day because it's the Twins and the Red Sox, and that is where both teams are from here. I hope that there'll be a 78th year of spring training here. It was a partial season last year. I got to go to 1 game, and then they all kind of trained at their home fields because the games didn't resume until July. People ask me, winter, what do I do in the winter when there's no baseball? I tell you what I do. I stare out the window and I wait for spring. Rogers Hornsby said that, and I believe he was a Cub and a Cardinal, but I know how he feels. Every year I'm waiting for spring. There is so much information about spring training here in baseball. I highly suggest, and by the way, that's Pedro Martinez that was autographing for people at a game a couple years ago. I highly suggest that the first place that you come to get your baseball fix is to come to Edison Ford Winter Estates, because we have a little baseball exhibit about the Philadelphia Athletics and Thomas Edison. And I'm here most weekdays if you would like to talk baseball. I would love it. I enjoy talking about it. I could do endless presentations on it. And to have that connection between Edison and the Philadelphia Athletics is absolutely amazing to me. Here's some of the resources that I used and some of the places I might suggest that you check out. The National Baseball Hall of Fame, an amazing site. I would love for them to have an exhibit on spring training because I think Fort Myers should be at the forefront. I went to the website newspapers.com and got some information there from various newspapers. A lot of them were AP Wire press releases. Florida Weekly, Glenn Miller does a lot of great writing there, as well as the news press. He also wrote for them, as well as David Dorsey and other people. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you go to the Lee County website, Terry Park Centennial Anniversary Commemorative Program, you can download that, and it celebrates Terry Park and talks about all the people who are there. Babe Ruth played in one exhibition game for the Philadelphia Athletics there. So Babe Ruth was actually at Terry Park, Boston Globe. Also, Roberto Clemente, a book about him, The Passion and Grace of Baseball's Last Hero. Under the March Sun, The Story of Spring Training. The book by Michelle Albion, The Florida Life of Thomas Edison. I'm going to start. I'm back. Do you have any questions for me? And I thank you because this is my first time doing this and I'm learning about Zoom. I participated in many, but I never did one. Do you have any questions for me? You can write in the chat box or you can go to the question and answer. I think there is one. Go Yankees, Beth? Oh my goodness. You know what? I'm just happy to have people excited about baseball. And since you said that, I'll tell you that the New York Yankees, their baseball stadium, the one that they were in for so long that unfortunately was torn down, that was made from Edison Portland cement, something that Mr. Edison had over 40 patents on and he manufactured. And honestly, I would have loved to have a piece of that to show in the museum. And there might be exciting days ahead where there might be something more relating to baseball at Edison Ford Winter Estates. Any questions at all? You all are so very kind. I'm used to doing my baseball presentations in person, and I'm not used to being the technology person. Fortunately, my boss helped get me started and things went smoothly. I hope that you will tell your friends because I have another presentation coming up on February 9th that talks about the Edison's family military history. There's so many stories there and connections with Edison's children, with Mina's brother, some great stories there. I hope you'll come and we'll get this started up again. And I'd like to keep on doing it and get other people to be here. Oh, I see some other names I recognize. I appreciate your support. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions at all? And if you're interested in baseball again, or some idea that you have for a topic, I have big shoes to fill. Adam did a tremendous job. He was very technologically savvy and had great knowledge. I'm going to do my best for you, but if you have suggestions, what I would ask is that you email me at hschaefer@edisonford.org. I would welcome your suggestions and your feedback. I thank you so much for coming. Thanks for joining me at Fenway Park here. Any questions? Oh, thank you. I hope we can see games together this year too. But you know, you can get the MLB network and they occasionally show spring training games. I think they're going to have them here, but usually the first week in December, I'm online. My husband and I are on there eagerly trying to get tickets. Baseball is a great escape. It's historic. I know lots of people think it's not fun, it's boring. Well, Theo Epstein, that was the general manager, and I believe the vice president of the Cubs. He was general manager with the Red Sox as a special consultant, trying to attract more young people to being on it, interested in the game. We'll see what the days ahead hold. Today, it's become more of an experience. I am not a person that gets up and down a lot during the game. I enjoy the game. I want to be there. I want to stay, if possible, till the last minute. Soak this up. Go to a game when you can again with a family member and create a memory and watch the game. Thank you all. I'm going to end it now. You have been a great, very polite and kind audience. Thank you so much. And ask your friends to join me next time on February 9th when I talk about the Edison family military connections. Thank you so much. Bye.